Luz Milagros, the miracle child. What appeared to be a tragic story ended up shocking the entire world. This woman couldn't believe what she saw when she went to the morgue to mourn the death of her newborn daughter. Keep an eye out to find out what it was, and together we'll find out her entire story at the end of the video. But first, like it and share it with others, and make sure you're subscribed and have the notifications bell turned on. Analia Buchet of Argentina and her husband, Fabian Bernan, were devastated when they learned that they'd lost their newborn daughter, Luz Milagros. The baby was born too soon. On the morning of April 3, 2012, Annalise sobbed when she learned that the baby girl had been stillborn, which meant that they'd lost her before they even had the chance to meet her. Luz Milagros' tragic death came as no surprise, given that she was born 3 months early and weighed only 780 grams. Still, the news astonished the couple, and they went to see her at the morgue 12 hours later with heavy hearts. They hoped to give miracles a first and final goodbye there. However, when the couple arrived, they were greeted with an unbelievable surprise. They couldn't believe it when they opened the coffin to see her. There, trembling in her coffin, was the little girl, who was alive, albeit not in the best of health. Analia was initially convinced that she'd imagined the baby wobbling, and even though when she saw her again, she said she fell to her knees violently, she was taken aback to see the baby trembling and breathing. It was a true miracle that she had survived nearly 12 hours alone down there. But Annalise didn't think that it was necessary to question it. God had given her baby back and her family at the time, and she burst into tears and laughed in disbelief before opening the coffin. And Annalise insisted on taking her sister's mobile phone into the refrigerated chamber. She'd been denied the right to see her baby and wished to have a photograph taken for the funeral and her own memories. She waited patiently, phone in hand, while her husband struggled to open the lid. Yet to be discovered was a crowbar, demonstrating that the hospital had no intention of allowing this couple to see their baby even once. Annalise got the scare of her life when the stage coffin was finally opened, and she pushed the lid aside to reveal the five-fingered hand. Fabian also claims he couldn't believe what he saw and recalls whispering to himself that this was all in his imagination. Following the discovery, a morgue worker immediately picked up the girl to confirm her survival. Annalise's brother picked up the baby and ran as fast as he could to the hospital, as the couple was too dazed to move, with Fabian and Annalisa frozen in shock, and he entered the neonatal intensive care unit. He began screaming at the doctors and pleading for assistance. He claims that carrying the baby was like carrying a bottle of ice. But really, how did the breach occur in the first place? How could so many medical personnel come to the same conclusion that this little angel was dead? Why wasn't she ever given to her mother for a cuddle? There are so many unanswered questions. The entire delivery process, according to the Burkett family, was unprofessionally declared dead. Luz Milagros was quickly placed in a coffin and transported to the morgue, and Annalise claims she received the death certificate no more than 20 minutes after the birth, and she was completely perplexed. She didn't understand a lot of things. She had 4 other children and was perplexed as to why she'd not been given a general anesthetic. Why was that correct? She recounted how she'd been taken away from her. At 10:24 a.m. her baby was born. She'd been in the freezing cold morgue for 12 hours and could see the ice on her body herself. Obviously, Annalise and her family launched an investigation into the hospital staff, neglected hospital paradox in the city of Residencia, and did not hesitate to sue them for malpractice. As a result, 5 medical personnel were suspended pending further investigation. Since the Bugay family has spoken publicly about the unprofessionalism they encountered, particularly following the discovery of baby Luz Milagros sadly has passed away. She died in the provincial hospital in Rosario, Argentina, just a few months after her first birthday. She died of multi-organ failure and disseminated intravascular coagulation, which led to shock, according to Leonardo Caruana, Rosario Hospital Secretary of Health. Luz Milagros spent 10 weeks in the hospital in Buenos Aires after being discovered. Understandably, the family chose to have their baby treated somewhere other than where she was born. During her first 10 weeks of recovery, the baby was kept in a specialized unit in Residencia before being allowed to go home. Even at the time, doctors warned the family that Luz Milagros would require constant medical attention due to her fragile state. Luz Milagros was fine for several months. However, things took a turn for the worse after she turned 1. Annalise rushed her to the hospital after she experienced a medical complication that resulted in cardiac arrest. Unfortunately, she was unable to be revived. Prior to Luz Milagros' death, Annalise and her family had worked tirelessly to raise funds to bring the baby to China. They hoped Milagros would be able to receive stem cell treatment here, but the doctors never approved the trip. They were concerned about her health, but it was this decision that ultimately led to her death. According to her family, Luz Milagros weighed a healthy 13 pounds and was mostly breathing on her own in the month leading up to her death. She did, however, exhibit signs of slow brain development, which was a major source of concern from the start. As heartbreaking as this story is, Edward Bell, a University of Iowa specialist in premature infants, discusses the odds of survival for a baby born at only 26 weeks old. Even in the most developed parts of the world, it's difficult for doctors to do anything to improve the baby's chances of survival. Fortunately, not all premature babies die in such tragic circumstances. As Luz Milagros pointed out, baby Noah is just one example of a premature baby defying all odds and surviving. In their worst nightmares, Noah's parents, Helen and Neil Clary, could not have predicted the circumstances surrounding his birth. So they were terrified and expecting the worst when Noah was born 14 weeks before his due date. Helen and Neil had been warned about his impending arrival before he was even born. Helen had been told that she would give birth within 48 hours, and the couple had been warned that his chances of survival were slim. They settled in for what they expected to be the worst events of their lives, expecting the worst. He was soon born, much to everyone's surprise, and he was not. Stillborn, his survival of delivery did not mean that they were out of danger, and the doctors needed to act quickly. Noah was so small that he weighed only 2 pounds 2 ounces. Doctors were so concerned about his survival that they had to put him in a sandwich bag to keep his body warm enough. He was then rushed to the intensive care unit, where doctors worked tirelessly to keep him alive. Meanwhile, new parents Helen and Neil sat in desperation, expecting to hear the dreadful news, Helen recalls. However, they were soon given even worse news. Further tests revealed that baby Noah's heart was wide open and the size of a thumbnail. It needed to be closed quickly if he was to survive. So he was rushed to the hospital for heart surgery. Helen claims that the 30 minutes he was in surgery were the longest of her or Neil's lives. His chances of survival were so slim that he didn't think he'd make it through this, let alone the delivery on the first day. However, he managed to somehow do it, albeit as extremely frail. Noah was alive and gradually showing signs of recovery. He eventually began to gain weight, and after 6 months on a ventilator, he was able to breathe on his own under the supervision of a cardiologist. Of course, Noah was finally able to be taken home from the hospital after a long and arduous recovery. He's now a happy and healthy little boy with no signs of illness. While Luz Milagros' story is tragic in and of itself, it's uncommon for healthcare professionals to let down patients in this manner. Noah is just one of many examples that demonstrate how hard and tirelessly hospital staff work every day to save people's lives. Thank you for your time. What are your thoughts on this story, my friends? How is this even possible? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section. That concludes today's discussion. Make sure your browser's notification bell's turned on. Hopefully, you'll keep it in mind at all times, and we'll talk to you soon. We bid you farewell.